Okay, we're just gonna get right into it because I've made every effort to try and figure out lighting. I dragged my setup downstairs today because I've been feeling like a little bit of a tortured genius these days, and I can't. My cozy corner lighting is not ideal, and anyways, there's all these elements when setting yourself up. Um, Via microphone and phone. This thing's got this big. Anyways, we're here. Um, yeah, I just gotta get this stuff out of my head. It feels really powerful and significant to share with you guys. I woke up like maybe an hour ago. I would never have done this had I not felt tortured by my own inspiration. But yeah, here we are. Um, I went to my first NA meeting yesterday, and for those of you that don't know what that is, it's Narcotics Anonymous. Now, I didn't go because thought I was an addict or I thought I needed help. Um, I went almost from a more of a business standpoint, and when my heart tells me that this is the next step on my path, I listen to it whether it makes sense or not. Like shaving my head bald, it didn't make any sense because it was gonna rock my world and make me feel pretty uncomfortable in my own skin for a very extended amount of time. But hey, I did it anyways. And so that's where I'm at. I'm gonna follow that rhythm. This is blue. Hey buddy, don't give yourself a bath. We're on camera. Um, yeah. I wouldn't have considered myself an addict at this point in my life. I'd been an addict at very young age, and I um had been sober various times throughout my life. Uh Sober. And I say that because what I've realized now after going to the first meeting, um like yes, it was also from a professional standpoint because I want to be a speaker in these meetings. I feel like I have something to offer to um everyone there. And then I realized after being there that probably most of us are addicts and we don't even know it. And the reason I say this is because, like, whether it's technology or food, sugar, like, society has set us up to be addicts. We don't live in a culture that supports the opposing side of addict, like the cheapest food to buy in the store is the stuff that is going to make you addicted and actually probably have withdrawals having getting off of it. So it's really, we don't live in a system, as most of you are aware, where we're set up to be successfully not addicts. Look at our phones. Um And that's why it feels like such a significant topic to talk about, because I know I'm not the only one who has navigated these symptoms and been like, what the is wrong with me? And I really thought that it was, here I go, burping on camera, sorry. I really thought it was like, I think having a brain injury was significant to the last few years of my life. But when sitting in the group yesterday, and it's anonymous, so I'm not going to share too in depth and in detail, but I recognized a lot of the symptoms of addiction that people were navigating was like cut off from friends and family, um, crappy sleep patterns, um, irregular eating habits, if not overconsumption or not consumption. Um, and so it's really interesting to think about, like, I know so many people navigating really similar symptoms. Some of the more extreme ones were like withdrawal, isolation, um, your relationships start to fade, uh, anxiety kind of consumes you. You struggle to leave the house or go to like public settings, which is one that was really prominent and has been really prominent for me in my life, which is also another reason why I felt going to these meetings was really appropriate, because they're support meetings, whether it's no matter what it's for, it's a support group. It's a support group to support each other through whatever difficulty it is that they're navigating, whether it relates to narcotics or alcohol or not. And so it was really interesting for me to um yeah, share a little bit about where I felt was most prominent at that time. Like, you answer a couple questions, although I don't really remember them because my short-term memory wouldn't allow it. And so I kind of just spilled a little bit of beans, and but everybody there is so like, good job. Good job for coming. Like, thank you for being here. Good job. We're here for you. And then everybody passed their phone number around to me so that the support is there, and they just, they're so welcoming, and they make you feel so supported. And I had no idea whether I'm addicted to narcotics or not, which I'm not. If anything, like, I smoke cannabis and would consider it to be like I guess, an addictive habit, because I do it out of like suppression, which is what I want to get into, because I realized it's not really drugs or alcohol or phones or um, sex, relationships, porn, whatever it is. It's not about, I mean, it becomes about the addiction, but I find what it really is the addiction to emotional suppression. And that's why this topic feels so significant to share with you guys, because I'm realizing that I'm not addicted to this or that. Like, I'm addicted to suppressing my emotions, which is what really comes full circle with why I feel so passionate about feeling. Like, if you watch my channel, everything's about, like, I'm constantly in this like allowing, like, I'm allowed to feel this way. I'm allowed to feel hurt, sad, upset, angry, tired. And I say these things because my entire life I've been taught to suppress. Or maybe not taught, but that's just, yeah, it's been definitely taught, because that's how it's just been as long as I can remember. And if I really think of like where addiction started for me, it was with sugar. Um, I was really young. I think I was 6 years old, and I remember like having to go to a hospital to get my teeth fixed, because, and maybe my parents just told me this so I would lay off the sugar. But I always thought, like, my name rhymes with candy. Like, I think it's my destiny, you know? I think it's my destiny to be Randy Loves Candy. And but I did, and I remember, yeah, going to the hospital and having to get some kind of surgery in my mouth, because my teeth were rotting out of my face. And that being said, like, my parents did their best, but they were in their 20s. I was the firstborn. I don't think anybody nails anything first time around. And so I don't blame them in any by any means. If anything, I blame the companies that make the shit that, like, when I go to eat that kind of crap now, I can taste the chemicals in it, because I've cleansed it out of my system so much. And so that's a really interesting topic as well. But yeah, um what's really really intrigued me is that I didn't know that I was an addict until recognizing the symptoms of an addict. And And I wouldn't have considered, yeah, I wouldn't have considered myself one in the last few years of my life because I quit drinking when I was 22 and I'm almost 27 now. And I quit marijuana for a year, and that was the first time I had ever quit smoking pot since I was 13. And that would have been when I was also 22. And it was because I was scared into sobriety. But then I realized like I just latched on to a man um in a relationship, and if I think about like the things that I felt inside of me within that relationship, there was a lot of anger, there was a lot of um like I could just never get enough, you know? And I recognized that it was my addiction, my addictive tendencies, in which I've probably had since I was 5 years old, because it started with sugar and then went to TV. And by the age of 12, 13, it was drugs and alcohol and um, partying, sex, boys, relationships, it just like the list goes on. And when I think about it coming hand in hand, this woman, she's an expert about, she's a dopamine doctor or a dopamine expert, and it really explains the cycle of addiction. And I'll make sure I drop the link to that podcast down below because it really helps me make sense of what it is that my brain or it feels like my being is like yearning for, and why the chase feels so um extreme, and at times I've felt so desperate for like something. And I remember when it went from whatever, cannabis and alcohol. I had gotten sober from like drugs and whatever, powders, narcotics, when I was 18. And I think I was probably fully sober for about a year and a half. That's when I really started living my life. It felt like I got out of a job I hated. Um, well, and let's back up a little bit. So when I was an addict, I had a group of friends that were also all addicts, and that was kind of like my lifeline in a way. And I got a job that I was able to sustain um high, basically. Um and then I remember when I got sober, I remember getting sober and like choosing a new path. I got onto Tony Robbins, and so maybe I was sober for more of my life than I had realized. But how sober is sober when you just pick up something else? Like I think I just became a Tony Robbins addict. So I think I still was chasing this dopamine. However, I do feel like there was like a sense of sobriety there. I had a really clear head. I got a really good job. I worked my way up the ladder. I became a manager in a year. Was operating a massive um facility, a medical cannabis facility, and I do recall that time in my life being sober. However, I would use things here and there. Well, maybe not though, because I smoked an extreme amount of marijuana. So it's like it doesn't matter. What I've recognized is it doesn't matter whether it's cocaine or pot. Like it's I used it all for the same reason. And even today, it didn't matter if it's my phone or TV. I remember like after sugar, by the time I was 8 years old, I was glued to I had those little black and white radio TVs, and I would sit in front of it like this close. And and then from there, like I got a bigger one, and it was probably the size of my face, and I just remember being glued to it, and I would sit there and I would eat and be glued to the TV. Yeah, and then it just escalated from there into drugs and whatnot. And so I really feel like the majority of human society, at least in like Western culture, is an addict of, are all addicts of some sort and are so unconscious of it. Um, which is a really awful place to be because if you're not aware of it, how can you get help? How can you even know that you need help? How can you even realize that, like, hey, this isn't right? Like, the way you feel, the way you need that thing in your life, and the way you break down and have a spaz when you don't. Like, I remember when I quit smoking. Smoking was probably one of the younger habits I picked up, probably like 12 or somewhere in there with cannabis and the rest of the drugs came in. But when I quit smoking and went to vaping, I would wake up in the middle of the night and just like my sheets looking for my vape. And I remember like I would lose my vape and be like, where's my vape? And I would, yeah, I'd have a little freaking meltdown about it. And that's when I realized, like, throughout like all the drugs and stuff, I'd always been able to like get them. So I don't recall ever having like that extreme and immediate, other than like it's always been nicotine that's caused that extreme immediate spaz or aggression, which is what that is something I also find really interesting, right? What's legal is actually like white sugar, nicotine, alcohol is some of the worst withdrawals that you will go through. I remember like I've withdrawed from a lot of drugs, tons and tons, and nicotine, when I quit vaping, I thought I was dying. Like, you always like, okay, don't get me wrong, because withdrawals are pretty harsh and you can feel like you're dying. But for about a week, I remember like I thought I had COVID for a bit, and then my skin hurt, my bones hurt. Like, I literally thought I had cancer in my body. And it was killing me rapidly. Like, that's what the withdrawal from vaping felt like. And so I guess I'm using this talk as also a way for me to really reflect on like this path of mine, and where how I've navigated it and where it's taken me, and um like how crazy this epiphany is to recognize that, like, wow, I've been an addict probably my entire life, or since I was 5 years old and stuck that sugar stick in my mouth or whatever, right? Like, I'm not I'm not fully sure. Um, but I know that there's been this part of my brain that's been chasing dopamine for like an aggressively long time. Because that dopamine, from what I understand, and if you'd like to know more about this, please do check out that podcast, because it, even if you don't think you're an addict, I would just like check. Or at least check out like the understanding, sorry. Um, oh gosh. Check out the symptoms of addiction. Um, I'm just gonna, well, sorry guys. I have to rotate. This isn't working for me. I was trying to be in the light. Sorry, you get a light side and a dark side. That's it. That's where I'm at. I need to be comfortable. Not comfortable. Okay. How you doing, Bean? Bean is here. He's not normally with me because he cannot reach the loft because it's up a ladder where my cozy corner is. I don't know, maybe I won't drag this one out too long, and I'll leave you guys with just this little reflection period, and I'll go into a deeper layer in another video, and just because my laptop's dying, and I don't necessarily like video editing. Actually, I'm not even sure how on this format, but yeah. And I mean, now we have this little black box nowadays that we call a cell phone, and it works for everything. Like, how could you not be addicted to it? Oh, I looped my earring through my earring. Oh, there we go. How could you not be addicted to something that provides everything to you? And then also, right? And so let's come back to like what I really wanted to tickle a fancy about. I don't know what that means nor why I said it, but is that there's an addiction to emotional suppression. And I don't think it matters if you use this or that or food or babies. I know I said that, but like, I don't know. I love kids. And maybe at one point I just like immersed myself in childcare and was like, I need these kids to survive. It becomes like a part of your survival. And I think that's really what addiction stems from. It's just like a survival need trying to fill itself. It's like that little hole we have within that came from a self sep came from a very young age, that caused separation from ourselves, from our intuition, and with that separation and also our inability to feel appropriately, like growing up in a society where you just suppress your emotions or have no choice because it's not okay to feel, right? And then that's what makes me so passionate about feeling. Okay, so I'm gonna definitely take this into another video, where I will go more in depth about all topics spoken about in this. But yeah, I really just wanted to bring awareness, and one of the things that really felt good about going into these support groups for me, even if I don't do narcotics or drink right now, I don't drink at all actually. I like try to have a drink and I'm like, ugh, but it's also like really bad for my brain injury. And anyways, so it just felt really good to have a supporting group of individuals that were like, it's okay to struggle. It's okay to be struggling. It's okay to be feeling the things you're feeling. And we need that so desperately in our society because we don't have it. And if the only way that you can find it is through narcotics or alcohol or AA or NA, at least in Canada, like I know, like you could, or even Canada and the US, like you can go anywhere and there will be these NAAA meetings and they're going to be the same across the board and everybody is super supportive and it's just there to be like, hey man, we understand where you're at, and we want to support you in your journey to sobriety, whatever that looks like for you, right? And that is so powerful. That is so powerful when a group comes together with the same intention. There's so much power to it, and I don't agree with some of the ways they do the group, and I don't agree with anything. Oops, sorry. I should have done that. I don't agree necessarily. Like, I feel like the system has intertwined itself still in these support groups. So it's like, yes, we're supporting each other, but there is still this element of like the system like weaseling its way in there. Um, so it's almost what it looks like to me is I don't feel like there's a lot for people past that. Or at least I've only been a one, so I don't have a whole lot of experience yet. And I will be happy to share more as this goes on. But yeah, it feels significant. It feels, I know like 90% of the people I know, if not everyone, could probably relate to what I'm saying, that, we live in a society where emotions weren't allowed, and so we needed to find some alternative way to deal with that. And that is where I really truly feel like addiction stems from, on a really general and foundational level in this human society we're in. Yeah, that feels like a good note to close this on. There will be another one coming soon as well. I'll probably just record it back to back. And so if you want to go deeper into this topic with me, please feel free to check out that video. Thanks so much for stopping in. I love you guys. And I really hope in some way, shape, or form this was able to add value to your day, your year, your month, your life. And that dopamine podcast will be in the description below. Till next time, love you guys.